Hi, my name is Cassandra Cavazos.
And this is our Community Diversity Project. For our Community Diversity Project, we decided on picking the species of birds. Our two locations are the Quinta Mazatlan in McAllen, Texas, and the Edinburgh Scenic Wetlands and World Birding Center in Edinburgh, Texas. The reason why we have decided on these locations was that they are well-known places in which birds can be seen. These parks harvest the birds and protect them from any harm that may arise from hunting or the loss of their home, and provide a home for those birds that migrate during this time of year. So, a little background for this particular study we've done. Our main focus is to study or investigate species richness and the overall diversity in two communities. Uh, in the valley around this time of year, starting mid-July to late October, many birds are seen due to their migration period. The winter is the most popular season for birding here in the valley. Mild to warm temperatures where the sunrise starts at 55 degrees and the day goes on to rise to 75 to 80 degrees. These temperatures make being outside enjoyable and bird activity is most likely to be high. These parks that we've chosen again are to protect the birds and they provide a comfortable environment for the birds to live in during their temporary stay. Prior to beginning our investigation, some outside sources were used to give an idea on what type of results we might obtain at the end of the study. One source focused on measuring the impact that plant availability has on bird richness. Its main results are the presence of shrubs and trees have a positive impact on bird richness as well as small lawns and canopies. They set a welcoming environment for birds. Our second source concluded that different types of habitats that birds are exposed to increase richness or impact richness and the availability for food sources. For example, one of our locations has a greater body of water, then our predicted outcome would be that there will be greater bird species at that location. Our last source proposed a factor that may impact our findings, which is that people and pets tend to decrease bird presence. That is very true because our locations, they're parks, so a lot of people go there and they can shy the birds away.
So, a brief overview of our field study that cover our hypothesis and methods used. To start off our proposed hypothesis, our hypothesis would be more species richness will be observed at Quinta Mazatlan than Edinburgh Scenic Wetlands and World Birding Center due to the greater target resources for the birds available at the Quinta Mazatlan location, such as food and plants to attract certain species. Our methods for recording data include visiting each location once and gathering data for around 2 hours using a point count system. Within the parks, there was several areas in which we were able to see different species of birds. However, at times we did not spot certain birds, but we were able to hear their callings. For statistical data, we calculated relative abundance and the Shannon's diversity index for each community, as well as constructed a relative abundance curve.
Once we collected our data for the two communities, a table was constructed where species quantity and relative abundance was calculated for each community. This table is for the Edinburgh Wetland and Birding Center. We can see that the species with the greatest abundance is the great heron and the ahinga, with the relative abundance of ahinga being 0.458 and the great heron have relative abundance of 0.427. The rest of the species found include the chalacas, hummingbirds, great kiskadee, painted bunny, which is a rare bird, and a yellow crowned night heron. These do not, however, make up much of the abundance of our sample. Moving on to Quinta Mazatlan Park, as you can see from the table, the relative abundance is since there's more species, it's a little equally distributed. There was more species found at Quinta Mazatlan than in the Edinburgh Park. The two species with the highest relative abundance is your common pigeons, right here, with a relative abundance of 0.462, and your bronzy Inca hummingbird, with a relative abundance of 0.205. Here we have constructed tables.
On this slide, we have the relative abundance comparison. We have constructed tables depicting relative abundance in both locations, comparing all the species side by side. We see here in the orange, that will be our Edinburgh location, and we have the species names there on the side in purple. And then in blue, we have the Mazatlan location showing the species abundance there in that area. The species have been ranked from the highest relative abundance to the lowest in both parks. It can be seen that in each park there was different bird species that were cited with only two species in common, these being the chachalacas and the great kiskadee. The chachalacas had a greater abundance in Quinta Mazatlan than in the Edinburgh Park, though. Here we have a continuation of our other slide. In this continuation of the table, it can be seen that both parks had a similar relative abundance for the great kiskadee. The difference of relative abundance might be due to the number of species acquired in the parks. Quinta Mazatlan had 8 species overall, while Edinburgh only had 7. Again, here on the table, we have the orange in Edinburgh and the blue in the Quinta Mazatlan. As you could see, only the great Kissimmee was seen in both locations, and you could see the abundance difference in each location due to. So this is the last part of the relative abundance comparison table. These calculations were then used to construct a relative abundance curve, which will depict species evenness and richness in both locations. Again, we have.
This is a curve that is used to assess species richness and species evenness, as Cassandra has said, giving a visual representation. This is the relative abundance curve. So how do we read this? Species richness can be read by looking at the length of the curve and the distance of the x-axis. Here we see that the curve at Quinta Mazatlan is much longer than the one in Edinburgh. Quinta Mazatlan has species richness of 8, while Edinburgh only has 7. This suggests that there's more species richness. Species richness is higher in the Quinta Mazatlan. Now we will look at species evenness. To look at that, we look at the slope. If it's a shallow slope, then it is more even. If it's steeper, then it is less even. Quinta Mazatlan has here you see a shallower, more smooth curve, meaning it has more species. Its species evenness is much greater than the Edinburgh. From species 2 to 3, we see a steep slope right here for the Edinburgh Birding Center. Another method that was used to assess this data acquired was to calculate the Shannon Diversity Index. These two tables can be seen here, one for the Quinta Mazatlan and the Edinburgh Birding Center. The species for both locations were ranked from most observed to least observed. As it was mentioned before, Quinta Mazatlan had 1 more species observed, a total of 8, while Edinburgh only had 7. As it can be seen in the tables, Quinta Mazatlan results in a higher diversity index, having 1.577 of diversity index, while Edinburgh only has 1.131. As our data suggests, all of our data has acquired that Quinta Mazatlan has a greater species richness, evenness, and as well as diversity from the diversity index. We will now cover the top 4 species that were found in the combined locations. These being the great blue heron and the pigeons, ahinga, and the bronzy inca.
That they use for hunting, so they will dive right into the water and just pierce the fish. Then we will be talking about the pigeons. So pigeons, everybody knows a traditional pigeon. It's pale gray bird with an iridescent shiny neck, and it has 2 black stripes on each wing. They're usually found in large flocks through cities and farmland. Their diet does consist of mostly seeds. However, it will eat anything, including human food. That is usually why they're mostly found in areas where people are populated. And they are generally found in the US, Mexico, and Canada. For our third species, we have the anhinga. They love to reside in wooded swamps, marshes, and ponds areas. Sources of food is fish as well, so they'll be around any wetland like the great heron. They use their spears like bills diving into the water piercing their prey the same. And they swim with their heads piercing out. So that's why they have the nickname of the snake bird, because their head does peek out of the water and they have really long necks. And when looking at the map here in the corner, you could see the areas that are populated by the Anhinga, and we're able to see that they clearly populate the areas where there is a big body of water. So if we're able to see closer, you could see the blue lines through the map of all the rivers and creeks that we have, and you'll see the purple populated areas right next to them. And for our last species. We have the bronzy Inca hummingbird, the little tiny hummingbird. They're a light brown color with a lighter throat. They have thin straight bills for sucking up nectar from the trumpet-shaped flowers. They are a rare species, but we were able to see one here at the Quinta Mazatlan, and we were able to see it only because of migration. So up here in the little map, you're able to see the areas that they usually are at, but we did see them at the Quinta Mazatlan.
As it was mentioned in the beginning, there were some birds that were not able to be sighted, but we did hear their callings. These include the brown thrasher, the white mockingjay, the rufous hummingbird, a little bit of the white mockingjay. It is a medium-sized songbird with small heads and short, rounded, broad wings. The overall color is a gray-brown, but then it has a little white and little white stripe right here, and this is a little sample of their calling. Okay, the brown thrasher. In Texas, the brown thrasher will range throughout the eastern one-third of the state, and it is commonly found in the eastern counties. This beautiful bird is in the same family as the mockingjay and has a rich melodious song heard often during springtime in breeding territory. This is a little sample. Okay, then moving on to the rufous hummingbird. This is a particular image of a male rufous hummingbird. This female is usually seen with green and orange colors. This hummingbird actually it migrates to the RGV during this time from mid-July to early October. So it is very common for us to see this type of bird in this park. In the Quinta Mazatlan, we actually saw it. Here's a little sample. All right, some final points for our presentation. As our data suggests, our hypothesis was proven correct. So Quinta Mazatlan did have higher richness, greater species evenness, and a higher diversity throughout its park compared to the Annenberg Birding Center. Some errors I do want to point out is that there could be some wrong identification of the birds done. Throughout the process, we did use an app called eBird, where we would take pictures of the birds and identify them. The app could have malfunctioned or something, and we could have not gotten the correct species. However, our study went on. That's one of our errors. Another error is that we could have double marked the same bird, so we could have seen one bird at another location and we've seen another bird in same area. We could have marked it twice. That's just some little errors. Moving on to some images captured during our study. So here you can see that there is some pictures here at the Annenberg Birding Center. This is showing the anhinga, which is the black little spots, and the white-blue heron, which is right here, the little white spots. We can see that they do reside in the body of water, so that's why we thought that maybe the outside sources, like they said, it could have had greater species, greater diversity, but that was proven wrong. I believe that it could suggest that the anhinga and the blue heron are the dominant species there. That's why there was less species diversity, less species richness. Here we see at Quinta Mazatlan, there was a small viewing area where different types of fruits and vegetables, including papaya, seeds, and green bell peppers, were laid out to attract birds, as well as a small water source for birds to drink water from. Food availability and the designated spaces for birds are a major reason why more diversity could also be seen in this park, as one of our resources indicated. Here we see some flowers that were seen at also at Quinta Mazatlan. We saw the little hummingbird here. Here to your right we have wax mallow flower, and we have the Asiatic dayflower. And these again attract mockingbirds. The presence of shrubs and canopies were seen at the Annenberg Birding Center. This encourages birds to rest on tree branches, and they just build a more comfortable environment for the birds. This was also indicated by one of our outside sources, but so we did see some outcomes that our outside sources helped on. And that will be the conclusion of presentation. This is our team, Catherine Davila and Cassandra Cavazos. Thanks. Thank you for taking time to view our presentation. And this is our last slide, resources. Thank you.